What if I told you that women don't fall for looks, money, or even charm? They fall for something far more powerful, something most men never truly understand. Because while almost every man knows how to compliment a woman, very few know how to make her feel something genuine, and that's what separates a boy from a man, and a man from a legend. This isn't about smooth talk or clever lines. It's about understanding the psychology behind feminine energy, what truly awakens her mind, touches her heart, and earns her respect without ever having to beg for her attention. Most men talk just to impress, but women listen for sincerity. They aren't moved by rehearsed lines, they're moved by presence, by depth, by words that carry emotional truth. And when those words come from a grounded, self-aware man who truly knows himself, she feels it immediately. It's not his age that pulls her in. It's his energy, his tone, his stillness. So listen carefully, because what I'm about to share isn't just about compliments. These are emotional triggers of attraction. They touch places within her no one else has ever reached. They are the words that make her pause, make her curious about who you are, and make her replay your voice in her mind long after the conversation ends. By the end of this, you'll understand why some men can say one simple sentence, and a woman remembers it forever, while others speak endlessly and leave no mark at all. You'll know exactly how to speak to a woman's soul, not her ego. Stay until the end, because once you understand this, you'll never look at attraction, confidence, or connection the same way again. Let's begin with the first and most misunderstood truth: depth over flattery. Most men think compliments are meant to boost a woman's ego. They use words like beautiful, stunning, amazing, believing repetition creates connection. But here's the irony: the more surface level the compliment, the faster it fades. A woman may smile or thank you, but inside, nothing changes. Because beauty alone doesn't keep her attention, depth does. And depth isn't about saying more, it's about seeing more. When a mature man speaks, he doesn't compliment to get a reaction. He speaks because he's actually observed her. He's noticed how her tone softens when she's vulnerable, how her eyes drift when she's lost in thought, how she holds back words because she's choosing grace over anger. So when he finally says, "I like the way you handle yourself," it hits differently. It's not flattery, it's reflection. It's truth filtered through understanding. Women are highly tuned to feel the intention behind words. They can instantly sense whether your compliment comes from a need to impress or a place of presence. That's why a grounded man's words carry weight. They come from someone who's done chasing validation and now offers awareness instead. He's not saying, "You're beautiful," to gain attention. He's saying, "There's something rare about your energy." And that distinction changes everything. In a world where everyone is trying to be noticed, a woman doesn't just want attention. She wants to be understood. She doesn't want to be the most attractive. She wants to be seen for her uniqueness. That's why empty flattery never works. It doesn't require real thought. But depth does. Depth requires perception. It shows you've been paying attention, that you've studied her silence as much as her smile, that you've noticed her kindness, not just her curves. That's what makes your words sacred. And here's where most men fail. They try to impress before they connect. They rush to prove they're different instead of showing that they've noticed differently. You don't impress a woman by calling her beautiful. You impress her by saying, "I love the way your eyes light up when you talk about something you're passionate about." You tell her, "The way you speak about your dreams. It's contagious." Suddenly, she feels safe, she feels seen. That's when emotional attraction begins. Flattery feeds insecurity, but depth feeds identity. When you compliment a woman with substance, you're not giving her something she lacks. You're confirming something she already knows deep down, but rarely hears acknowledged. That's what creates emotional intimacy. It's not manipulation. It's truth spoken through awareness. A woman will always remember how a man made her feel about herself in his presence. And a man who's lived through mistakes, heartbreaks, and lessons understands that words are sacred currency. He uses them wisely. He doesn't speak to fill silence, he uses silence to make his words meaningful. When he says, "You make people feel comfortable," she doesn't just hear it. She feels it. because no one else has ever noticed that about her. Depth isn't about being poetic, it's about being present. It's not about saying the perfect thing, it's about feeling what's real. That's the difference between a boy and a man. A boy compliments beauty he barely understands. A man honors depth he's taken the time to recognize. That's the secret. Women fall for the man who sees them beyond the obvious, the one who can describe them in ways no one else ever has. Because when you see a woman's essence, you touch her spirit. And that's the part of her that never forgets. So next time you speak, pause. Don't reach for easy words. Let your observation guide you. Let your awareness shape your language. Compliment the parts of her she thought no one ever noticed. In that moment, you become unforgettable. A true compliment isn't about saying something nice. It's about giving someone a piece of truth they didn't realize they needed. When you do that, your words don't just pass through her mind, they live in her memory. And that's what women truly crave, not words that flatter the surface, but words that recognize the soul. So stop chasing beauty, start recognizing depth, because the woman who feels seen will never forget the man who saw her first. Now let's go even deeper into what most people never grasp. Women don't actually want validation, they want recognition. Validation says, I see what you're showing. Recognition says, I see what's real. That's a huge difference. Validation feeds the ego, recognition nourishes the soul. Once a man understands that difference, everything about how he connects begins to shift. Think about it. A woman can get validation anywhere, from social media, from attention, from shallow compliments that mean nothing. But recognition, that's rare. Recognition is when you notice what's behind her surface. It's when you say something that proves you were actually present, that you didn't just see her, you understood her. When you tell a woman, I respect how you think, you're not validating her looks, you're honoring her mind. When you say, you have a peaceful energy, you're not feeding her vanity, you're recognizing the emotional calm she brings into your world. That's what separates grounded men from the rest. They've lived long enough to understand that true connection doesn't come from admiration, it comes from attention. Validation makes her feel desired. Recognition makes her feel known. And that's what she craves, because deep down every woman is tired of being looked at. She wants to be understood. When she meets a man who listens to understand rather than to reply, who observes without trying to control, she relaxes. Her guard drops. She begins to feel safe enough to be herself. And that's when attraction turns into intimacy. The kind that stays long after the conversation ends. You see, validation is shallow because it comes from need. Men who haven't yet mastered themselves give compliments to women hoping to get approval in return. But when you've grown emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, you no longer need to seek validation to feel confident. You acknowledge her because you value honesty and truth. That's the masculine energy that eases her inner chaos. It's not about being flawless. It's about being aware enough to notice what others miss. Recognition is born from attention. It's when you see the little things. The way she pauses before she answers because she's thinking carefully. The way her tone softens when she's guarding her feelings. The subtle change in her energy when she's uneasy. When you can recognize these things gently, she feels seen. You're not flattering her, you're showing that her inner world matters to you. Most men offer compliments just to fill silence. But a mature man observes, waits, and pays attention to patterns. When he finally speaks, his words carry weight. A woman will remember the man who said one honest thing far more than the ones who said 100 meaningless things. Because recognition doesn't echo in her ears, it stays in her heart. True recognition also takes patience. It means you don't rush to fix her emotions or try to control her reactions. You simply hold space for them. That's something younger men rarely understand. A woman doesn't want to be solved. She wants to be understood without judgment. When you give her that, she feels emotionally safe. And that's when she starts to admire you. Not because of your age, but because your energy feels secure. This is where emotional maturity separates men. A woman can instantly feel whether your compliment comes from awareness or insecurity. Awareness makes her trust you, insecurity makes her question your motive. When you recognize her strength, she feels supported. When you flatter her to gain approval, she feels drained. Recognition is spiritual. It's not about what you say, but what your presence communicates. When you look at her with genuine curiosity, not to analyze her but to understand her, she feels it deeply. Because energy never lies, you can't fake calmness. You can't pretend awareness. Either you're emotionally centered, or you're not. And when you are, your words become rare treasures. She'll replay them in her mind long after you're gone. Not because they sounded poetic, but because they came from truth. Recognition builds memory. Validation just makes noise. So next time you're with a woman, don't search for something beautiful to say. Look for something true to notice. See what makes her unique, not just what makes her attractive. Speak to the parts of her that others overlook. Because that's where genuine connection begins. Not in fantasy, but in awareness. If you want a woman to truly fall for you, stop trying to impress her. Start recognizing her. Because a woman who feels recognized will never forget the man who saw her. Not as an image, but as a real person. So don't validate her to please her. Recognize her to free her. Because when she feels deeply understood, that's when she chooses to trust you, not just with her time, but with her truth. Presence speaks louder than words. This is where most men lose before they even start. They believe attraction comes from what they say, what they wear, or how confident they seem. But women don't fall for appearances, they fall for energy. They fall for how a man's presence makes them feel. You can say all the right things, but if your energy feels restless, needy, or forced, she senses it immediately. You can't fake calmness. You can't fake self-assurance. Presence isn't about speaking more, it's about feeling more. An older man carries presence because he's lived long enough to be at ease in silence. He doesn't need to fill every pause with words. He's learned that silence, when paired with certainty, creates curiosity. When he speaks, he takes his time. He allows his words to breathe. He looks into her eyes not to charm her, but to truly understand her. And that alone shifts everything. Because women are not drawn to the loudest man in the room, but to the one who feels the most grounded. Presence is emotional safety. It's when a man's energy silently says, "You can relax here." Women don't trust words until they've felt that energy. That's why you can call her beautiful 100 times, and it still won't matter if your presence feels uneasy. But if you simply look at her with calm patience and quiet confidence, she'll remember that feeling long after the moment passes. Most men underestimate how sensitive women are to small shifts. She feels it when your tone changes. She feels it when you pretend to listen but your attention drifts away. She feels it when you try to prove your worth instead of owning it. That's why presence is real power. It's silent communication that says, "I don't need to prove who I am. I already know who I am." And the moment she senses that, attraction deepens. When a man is truly present, his energy slows down the pace of everything around him. He creates a space where she doesn't have to perform. She doesn't need to be perfect, or strong, or charming. She can just be herself, and that's the most magnetic gift you can give. Peace in a world that constantly demands her performance. That's what women fall for. That's what opens them emotionally. Presence isn't about dominance. It's about awareness. It's the skill of reading the room, feeling the energy, and responding with patience instead of reaction. It's when you notice her small discomforts and adjust without her needing to explain. It's when you stay steady while others rush to fill silence. That stillness makes her feel like she's with a man who's not ruled by fear or ego, but by self-control. Older men often embody this naturally because they face loss, failure, and disappointment. Those experiences teach patience. They teach silence. They teach that not every moment needs control. That's why women are drawn to mature energy. It's not about age, it's about emotional balance. When you can stay grounded in chaos, she feels safe in your presence. That's the quiet strength of true presence. It doesn't demand attention, it earns respect. And here's the paradox: when you're deeply present, you actually say less, but she hears more. Your words have weight because they come from calm conviction. You're not trying to fill space, you are the space. That difference changes how she reacts to you. She listens more carefully, she opens more fully, Because presence builds trust faster than charm ever could. This is why emotional intelligence matters. When you're grounded, you stop performing. You stop chasing approval. You stop trying to impress. Instead, you start being intentional. You begin to notice her emotions as they unfold. The small pauses, the slight changes in her eyes, the hesitation in her breath. You don't interrupt them. You allow them to exist. You make space for them. And that's when true connection turns into chemistry. A woman doesn't remember the man who spoke the most. She remembers the one who felt the most real. The one whose stillness quieted her overthinking. The one whose voice slowed her heartbeat. The one whose presence felt like home. In that moment, she's not being flattered or admired. She's being understood. That's the true power of presence. It's not something you perform. It's something you embody. It's the energy of a man who's done the inner work, who's healed his impatience, who's no longer ruled by his need to impress. It's the confidence of someone who no longer seeks attention because he already carries it within. So if you want to master attraction, stop chasing reactions. Own your energy, speak less, feel more, and listen deeply. Because your presence, calm, focused, and real, will always speak louder than your words ever can. And remember, this presence isn't about being seen, it's about being felt. The man who can be felt without trying will always be remembered without speaking.